Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Institute for Ideas and Imagination at Réel. I'm Sari Castro, and I am the programming coordinator. I'll keep this brief. We know that you are all here to see the film. Tonight, we're honored to present A Fidai Film, the latest work by our lovely fellow and filmmaker Kamal Aljafari. A Fidai Film was premiered at the Vision du Réel International Film Festival, where it received the Grand Jury Prize, and since then, it has been selected for numerous festivals and has earned over 15 international awards. The film draws on archival material seized during the 1982 invasion of Lebanon, transforming it into a powerful meditation on memory, resistance, and the role of cinema in bearing witness. Following the screening, Kamal will be joined by writer and critic Adam Shatz for a conversation, and there will be time for a few questions from the audience. Thank you to Adam and Kamal for organizing this event, and thank you all for being here tonight. And let's start with A Fidai Film. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming this evening, and I think we should have another round of applause for Kamal. It's such a haunting film and a remarkably topical one too. Watching this film, it's impossible not to think about the current situation now, the destruction of Gaza, as well as the repression of speech in favor of Palestinian rights and freedom on our campuses in the United States, notably Columbia University. And in fact, about a month or so ago, I was talking to someone at the institute here, wondering whether we were even going to be able to hold this event. This was not long after the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil, student leader. Just a few days ago, another student leader at Columbia, Mohsen Madawi, was arrested in Vermont at his citizenship interview. And I think it's really important to underscore here that the attack on knowledge of the Palestinian question is central to the politics of dispossession that you're exploring in this film, and that it's also become, and this is perhaps one of the most surreal events of recent times, it's become intertwined with the whole question of the future of American democracy, whether we'll even have a democracy. So this is an incredibly pertinent film. You and I were talking earlier today about Godard, who Jean-Luc Godard, who had a very strong interest in Palestine and was in Jordan in the late 1960s, just before Black September. And Godard said that it's not enough to make political films. You also have to make films politically. And I think that's what you've done here. You've done something that not only offers a kind of critical history of the present, a genealogy of the Palestine question. You've told it in a way that is formally radical and eye-opening. I wonder whether we could start by talking about some of those formal elements which are not unique to this film. I mean, you're known as a filmmaker who works with found footage, but if I'm not mistaken, a good deal of the footage in this film comes from the Palestine Research Center in Beirut, which was ransacked by the Israelis during the 1982 invasion, known at the time in Israel as Operation Peace for the Galilee. So perhaps you could talk first about how you acquired these images. I mean, I'm assuming that it was a lot of research went into actually making this film. Perhaps you could talk about your process first.
Well, thank you so much. I'm very happy to share this film with you, and especially in this time. Just as a matter of fact, we finished working on this film in August 2023, so it has really no relation whatsoever with what happened as of October. But of course, when you watch the film today, you think a lot about now about the situation, in particular in Gaza. Just to give you background of the process that I went through myself, when I started collecting the material for this project, and this is one of the really amazing elements, aspects of working with found footage, that it allows you really to study patterns. And in this process, one really major pattern that I noticed, and it became actually the structure of the film, was the repeated violence that we see as early as the British Mandate in Palestine. I mean, one of the first sections of the film, which is named in the Museum of Days, is basically showing you images from mostly from the 30s during the British Mandate in Palestine, which was really a very violent mandate. I mean, there's the wonderful book by Rashid Khalidi, 100 Years of War on Palestine, where he gives a lot of details about this period, which didn't last long, but it caused the lives of so many people in Palestine. And in fact, to suppress the uprising that happened in Palestine against the British Mandate and the Zionist project in general, the British Army brought their special unit from Ireland with all the expertise they had in suppressing the Irish people. That's why, the connection between Irish people and Palestinians in general, because they share this history.
That's actually the subject of Rashid Khalidi's next book.
As well, okay. So I read about it, but I never seen the images. I mean, I never seen, when I was collecting for this project, I never seen this images that you see the beginning, in fact, of the method that we know it now, that is being practiced in a much bigger scale, which is the collective punishment. And in fact, the collective punishment was introduced by the British. Again, bringing it to Palestine after long experience in Ireland, in India, and in other colonies as well. So yeah, when I started collecting, I was really, at times I was really very shocked, because I could see just the repetition year after year, and at the end, it didn't matter to me who's doing what to whom. And this is, in fact, the language of the film. It's a film which is, in this case, it is about the case of Palestine, but it could be a film about any other place. So yeah, I have been working for a while with found footage, because in a way I came to this conclusion that found footage and archives are, in fact, the camera of the dispossessed. I mean, it's actually one of the chapters of the last chapter of the film. And it was a film that I wanted to make about the whole idea of looting archives and images, and why this has to happen. And in fact, the starting point of the film, which is the premise of the film, the looting that happened in 1982, wasn't the first looting. I mean, in 1948, with the occupation of most of the cities in Palestine, and later on 1967, for example, most of the photo studios were looted. And they are kept until today in some archives, army archives in Israel. So there was something which is, in fact, strangely enough, related to the time we are living today and the situation at American universities, just as an example, in which, in fact, in this case of the Palestine Research Center, they were really targeted many times before the occupation of 1982 of Beirut and Lebanon, and the looting of the archives. So first, there was an attempt to kill, in fact, the rector of the institute, Anis Saer, that I'm quoting here from his memoirs. In 1973, he received a letter with explosives inside, and it exploded in his hands. And he survived it, and he kept somehow working at the institute with really great difficulties. He had horrible hearing condition, and he lost one eye and his fingers. And then in 82, finally, the army manages to go to this place and to take everything, as we see in the interview, which actually I found in an Israeli TV, in the Israeli TV archive, but it wasn't broadcasted. It was made, but it wasn't broadcasted finally. And it's, in fact, it is the evidence of what happened exactly there, that the army came in and took everything, etc. But for me, the most really horrible thing that happened was afterwards, in 1983, after the withdrawal of the Israeli army from Beirut. Some of the employees of the institute, which went hiding because they were all wanted by the army, some of them went back and they started somehow reconstructing the library of the institute. And then this car bomb happened and basically put an end to this project, because most of these people were killed, and really it caused such a destruction in the street, and it was really one of the biggest, in fact, explosions that happened during the whole civil war in Lebanon. So
one of the ironies too is that at this Palestine Research Center, Sabri Girias, one of the directors, who was from Israel,
from Fasout, yeah.
From Fasout. I think he's there now again, actually, and he was presiding over this effort to produce works of history and analysis of Israeli society.
Actually, this was one of the aspects that was the most dangerous, according to the Israeli army. And speaking of Sabri Girias, making this film, really, it was a total. I mean, I don't know if we believe in if one believes in chance, but I came across an article which was published in the New York Times, in the archives of the New York Times, and then at the same time, by chance, I met the daughter of Sabri Girias, Fida, who was writing a book about her life, because in fact she lost her mother in this explosion. And then I started playing with this idea of making a film about it, and I really didn't know where to start. And I started researching, reading, and I found some traces of looted materials, and which appeared in some of some of books and films made by Israelis. And I didn't have direct access to the Israeli archives, obviously, so I got in touch with some of them, and it was really the most, I would say, the most problematic and humiliating process that I went through while making this film, because these people that actually, some of them made a whole career researching and writing about these looted materials, did not want to share this with me. And it was really quite shocking for me, because one of them, she claims to be a post-colonial scholar and a friend of the Palestinians. And I visited her at home, at her home in Tel Aviv. And I told her about the project, and she told me she's a fan of my work, and all was wonderful, so I thought she's gonna give me this material. So I arrived, and it's really a crazy story, because I came to her house and she prepared everything for me to look at the material. She had an extra computer that she put there at the table in the kitchen, and she sat next to me with another computer of hers. And she had many files on this computer, and she gave me a notebook and a pen, and she told me, we have 2 hours, because I have to teach afterwards. So have a look and tell me what you want. So I'm starting to watch, and there's a lot of things, and I'm trying to take notes. And at some point I tell her, but I really need time to look at this. I can't look at everything in 2 hours. There are like hundreds of material here. And then she said, yeah, I know. I have actually much more than that. So I was, while I'm talking to her, I'm thinking how to find a way to upload everything on my Google Drive. So while I'm playing with this idea, and I open my phone, I'm sharing this with you because it's really, in a way, it's funny, because she thought probably that I would do that. So at some point, while I'm trying to do it, and it was really difficult to do because there was so much, and uploading, and it's like it's taking time, So I'm really stressed, and that she will see it. And while I'm doing it, and because she went down to the first floor, so I'm trying to do it. Meanwhile, because her son came, back from school, and he came up, and she came next to me again, sat next to me, and I stopped. And then he goes down again, and he tells her, "Oh, there's no internet. What happened, Mom?"
Oh God. Oh Lord.
And she tells him, there is a problem with the internet connection. So, this boy, he goes back, and I hear him saying to his mom, "No, you just took out the power." So basically, she cut the internet because she was so worried that I will connect in a mysterious way with the internet, and then I will. Anyway, it was really absurd, and all this time I'm trying to convince her to share with me some of this material, and she did not want. And I leave, and then I try to communicate with her per email, and at some point, and she wasn't willing to share with me anything, and at some point I told her, "Listen, I will write about this. I will say everything you told me." And one of the really, I'm remembering some things that she told me. At some point I told her, "But why don't you give it back to its owners?" And she tells me they don't want to talk to me because I'm an Israeli. I said to her, "No, it's not possible. I mean, if someone, I'm sure if you give it back to, some of these people exist, and their families at least. So she claimed that actually nobody wanted to talk to her. And then one of the most shocking actually things that she told me, why she cannot share with me the material. She said to me, "I'm not the copyright holder." So I said, "Yeah, I know." That's the whole point. So it was really absurd, and it was really such a weird experience. Anyway, I wrote her again and again, and she at some point she said to me, "Okay, I can share with you some files, but I don't know how to do it." So I created a Google Drive, link for her. I told her, just drop the files there on this link. And she told me, "I cannot do it. I don't know how to do it." So I explained to her how to do it. Finally, she sent me some 20 files, terribly compressed. So I cannot use it. But for me, it wasn't a problem because, I work with this low quality. There's so many ways today to somehow make it look better and produce the feeling you want to produce. So yeah, this was really very, very, in a way, very shocking for me, because why would you keep all of that in your house? And one of the things that she told me while, she was making friends with me, she told me, as a child, I used to play with old photographs. And I tell her, "What photographs?" She said, "Yeah, my father was a soldier, and he brought home, after 1967, boxes of photographs. And she used to play with these photographs at home." So, you hear of that, and the psyche of kind of a colonialist comes to your mind, like, what is this? You don't know where to start, where to end, where it's really bizarre. Anyway, I started with these few images, these few files that she gave me, and then I found other things, other files online, especially that it was the year 2001 during COVID. And for some reason, the different archives, and especially the cinematheques in Israel, they came up with the brilliant idea of putting things online, to create online portals. So I discovered that very early because a friend of mine, Palestinian filmmaker Elias Suleiman, told me, yeah, someone mentioned to him that they have his film in the archive, and they shouldn't have it. Someone saw it online, and he was telling me, "Can you help me to find out whether it is true or not?" And then I went to this website, and then it's true, there was a portal there, and I wrote the name of the filmmaker, and I found his film. So I told him, "Yeah, your film is there." So he had to write the lawyer, and then. But what I discovered was a very well done archive, in fact, that was being updated, and I enlisted to their newsletter. So from that point, for almost 1.5 years, they would send me, I would just receive these emails, about materials that they uploaded. And for 1.5 years, I basically created my own archive out of their archives. And by basically recording the screen. At some point, they changed the system. And then, like if you record the screen of Netflix, for example, a big company, you just get black. So then this happens, and then I was really worried that I cannot continue researching with this project. Then I spoke to a friend who was very expert of this kind of stuff, and he helped me to find a way to continue doing it. So basically, I spent a lot of time collecting, and many of the things that I collected, I found interesting, but I didn't know how I will use them. And it's really interesting about what I was saying before about working with archives, that you can study patterns, you can see things that perhaps the people who uploaded these files, or even the filmmakers who made these films, whether fiction or propaganda or documentary, whatever you call them, there are things there that exist within the frame, in the picture, that they do not see. And my work as a filmmaker has been really almost like an archaeologist. I collect, and then I watch, and I watch a lot of material. And one of the discoveries for me was, for example, this wonderful short fiction film of the couple on the beach, which was made in the 60s. And when I saw it, it was really, in a way, quite entertaining, because they speak about their love relationship, but in a way, for me, they were speaking about the country and what is being done to the country. Right. Sorry?
We are here. Right?
Yeah, we are here. We are here. And, again, you find things that you had no idea about. And it becomes really such an important element of the project, because it allowed me really to establish this dialogue, if you want, between this couple in color and, for example, the woman in black and white, the Palestinian woman in black and white, who was the wife of Hani Jawhariya, who was a Palestinian photographer killed in the 70s in Lebanon. And going back to Godard, it's exactly what Godard basically says in his film, Our Music, Notre Musique, where he says, speaking of the shot and the reverse shot. So for me, really finding these elements was, in fact, the process itself. It's the really method of collecting.
And in that scene from Notre Musique, Godard makes some remark to the effect that the Israeli Jews in '48 became the people of fiction, and Palestinians became the people of documentary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then he shows the image of the Jewish immigrants arriving, what he calls the Holy Land, in color, and the Palestinians leaving the country in black and white. And in many, in many ways, his statement in the film is apt. I mean, it is true. But of course, you have to understand it poetically, otherwise you go crazy. So in a way, the film, I work with this material, and I collect, and I find myself, in fact, creating, in a way, dialogue between the images, and all in fragments, because one of the big challenges, in fact, that's the reason why I ended up, in fact, using many of the shots and films and fiction or documentary that I found in Israeli archives, and they were shot by Israelis, that it allowed me really to complete the picture. So one section is the looted material that we see in the film, and that part, at the beginning, I scratch on it, and I cover it with red. And the other part is really diverse material, which is basically finally about the Israeli, if you want, the Israeli experience in this place. And with time, watching these materials, everything became for me so abstract. And it allowed me really to tell a story that, for me, wasn't really only about Palestine, but about any colonized place.
I wonder if you could talk a bit about the text that you draw upon. It seems as though, I mean, in this film, you're particularly attracted to the work of Ghassan Kanafani. You quote from Return to Haifa and also from his story, A Letter from Gaza. Could you talk about, and Kanafani, of course, was not just a distinguished writer, but also a leader of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, who was assassinated along with his niece in Beirut in, I believe, 1972. So talk a bit about Kanafani.
So I actually came to the idea to use Kanafani or to quote him in this film because one memory I had as in my childhood, I was, I think, 14 or 15. And I went to a school in Ramle, which is now an Israeli city with a Palestinian minority. And in the school, we didn't have really anything, we didn't learn anything about the Palestinian history. It does not exist.
And Ramle was a city where one of the major expulsions took place.
Yeah.
The deportations of Ramle and Lid in 1948.
Exactly. So at some point, our history professor, who was a communist, he was Palestinian. So he told us, okay, we're gonna study everything that we have to study for the exams, and it was mostly, one of the most ironical thing about the Palestinian existence inside Israel, that we study the history of the Jewish people. And what is the history of Jewish people apart from the the fantastic ancient history? Is actually all the tragedies that Jewish people went through, and the Holocaust, and everything possible. And so we studied all of that, and of course, as a child, you identify yourself with all these victims, obviously. So he told us, okay, we're gonna do an exercise. You go and you record testimonies from old people in Ramle. So I did that, to about what happened in 1948 and the life before 1948. So I did that with our neighbor, and he told me the story, the exact story that I found many years later when I read a short story by Kanafani called A Page from Ramle. And it was really quite incredible when I discovered that, because as Kanafani, most of his writing was based on talking to refugees and collecting their testimonies and writing his fiction. And I did the same as a boy, as a schoolboy, and I found a man that told me exactly the story that someone else in Beirut, in Lebanon, or in Syria, I don't know where, told Kanafani the same story about the boy standing on one leg. And this is where I had the idea of I have to incorporate that into the film, because actually it was really challenging to make the film. How you narrate such a story? There's so much missing. And what do you tell? And how much do you tell? So I started with this quote, which is taken from Kanafani's short story, A Page from Ramle, which is related to where I was born. And there was almost a personal connection with this place, with the story. And then I went back and I read most of his writings again, because I thought, okay, I should find more elements that will help me to narrate the story. So I added 2 or 3 other sections in the film with his quotes, because I am someone that I'm trying really to work with abstraction. I mean, there were many things that you would think, okay, why you don't tell us directly what we're seeing or where we are? And I can do it, but I don't do it. Simply because I reached a point where I believe that abstraction leads to humanization and universality. So I had to work with the language that actually, even if you're someone that has nothing to do with this place, or even you don't understand where we are, through the abstraction, it leads you to an emotional connection with what you're watching. And this is what I wanted to achieve in this project. Rather than explaining again what happened in 1948, there are many films about it, there are many books about it. But in this case, for me, it was really working with this medium of cinema to try to narrate this place and what happened to this place, what is happening to this place until today.
I mean, is it also that abstraction encourages a more active form of spectatorship? I mean, when we look at these images, we're forced to ask, well, what's actually going on in them, and what is our relationship to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, some of the materials that I received was so destroyed because it was also compressed as sent by this woman. And at some point, I was watching these shots that were really almost covered by lines. You could see almost nothing. And suddenly I had this idea, I should cover these lines with red. So, you know, these decisions were in fact, or came in fact because I had limited material, and I had a very compressed material, and I had almost nothing. And that's why actually one chapter is called, again, The Camera of the Dispossessed. So the idea is really to work with very little and also to work with the repetitions. So an image can be seen, most films, they show you an image only once. Unless you are Palestinian, you know, the giant filmmaker from Armenia, he worked with loops, with repetitions. And the repetitions are so essential in cinema because they create this connection that we miss very often when we watch films, in going back again and understanding better, feeling better. So it's actually a cinema that it is slow and it's very reduced and tries to make you feel rather than understand.
And it creates a kind of musical structure. And I thought perhaps you might want to talk a bit about this idea of a Fidai film, or for that matter, camera of the dispossessed. What are these terms? The Fidai are those who sacrifice, the Palestinian fighters. What do these terms mean to you?
Actually, I came up with the idea because I met Fida, you know.
Oh.
And
Sabri's
so
daughter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but again, in the Israeli terminology, the Fidayin, the people, the fighters, they were called in Hebrew saboteurs. And it's an interesting term because they were not called terrorists. Actually, until today, you know, they are called saboteurs. And I found this term quite interesting because somehow it allowed me to understand better what I'm doing with this film. Because if you have very little and you don't have access to the archives, and you want to find a way to express yourself, you end up sabotaging. And I think this is something that happened while I was working and collecting, that one day in the morning I woke up and I thought, oh, it's a Fidai film. It's a sabotage film. And I used this title. Some of my friends told me, you're crazy, don't use this title. Nobody's going to watch this film. Nobody knows what is a Fidai film. But it didn't matter to me because I just wanted to create a film that is dealing with all these questions related to image making and that sometimes can be only done by sabotage.
I think we have a bit of time for questions now.
Thank you very much, Kamal. It's very powerful documentary. I was wondering if how did you choose what you want to put for each image? Because sometimes it's a reporter when there is this explosion. Sometimes it's a Kanafani. Sometimes there is nothing. You know, we have to guess. So how did you go through this process?
I think in general, you know, the process itself is to construct a narrative where things are hidden, but in a way that you can find them. It takes time sometimes, but you find them. And that's the big challenge, because how you calculate that? I mean, it's something that you have really to rely on your senses. And you reach a point in the process of making a film, and especially in this kind of films, because there's no really script, you know? I mean, for example, in the process of making the film, I found the song in the Museum of Days. Something that I didn't know about. I never seen this scene before, and becomes such a crucial element of the film. The film almost begins and ends with it. So it was really a process of researching and making the film at the same time. And I was finding things until the last moment of the sound mixing, and the people who were working with me, they were going crazy. Because, you know, it's not the type of film where, okay, it's over, you shot, it's production, you know. And especially since that all these archives, they have, you know, they were uploading more and more, and they were sending me these emails, the newsletters. And I would find things that become so important for the film, you know, and I have to change the film again. So, in case you can go on forever making this film. But at some point, I had to stop. But yeah, it's difficult to answer this question, because it's such a process where, in fact, I work with such minimalism that I'm kind of putting brick after brick, you know, and trying to construct something that I would say emotionally is expressing a state of mind, but not giving you really, answers, you know, or explaining to you exactly what happened there. I mean, one element that I spoke about at the beginning, which is the element of the repeated violence, for example. So you see, massacres, you see people are being killed, but the film never tells you who's doing it. And I think it's beside the point, because a victim is a victim. And at some point, you know, in the making of the film, I realized actually these patterns are the structure. So that's how I found the structure of the film, that I came back again and again to images that actually, in a way, are similar.
Thank you for the film and for your comments. I want to ask a different kind of question about the looting of the Palestinian Research Center's materials, and obviously the Israelis have been holding on to this. And more recently, we've seen the destruction of libraries in Gaza, et cetera, et cetera. And so, and it just makes me think about, I mean, one of the things I appreciate about the film, in addition to all the violence and the war scenes, is that showing Palestine as a real place historically, because part of the narrative that they want us to hear is that there was no such thing, right, as a Palestine, and it was always Israel or whatever, but Palestine never existed. And we see the same thing in America now, where, you know, the administration is scrubbing websites, taking down data, taking down Black history, you know, erasing the histories that they don't want anybody to have access to. So I think it's a real, it's a project of colonizers and authoritarians that they don't want people to know the history. So my question is, do you know more about the status of other archives that document Palestinian history? Where are they? I hope they're not all controlled by the Israelis. At least they didn't destroy it, right? It was there for you to discover. But as a historian, this is really important as a historical question for Palestine, obviously, but also for our own time, when we see history being erased in front of our eyes.
I mean, you know, it's a, in this situation, you know, you end up finding so many people that do this work themselves. So you have private people that do that, but there are some institutions as well.
I mean, there is the Center for Palestine Studies in Beirut.
Exactly, which wasn't looted, by the way, because it was registered as a Lebanese institution, and the board of the Palestine Research Center, the Institute of Palestine Studies was had a lot of Lebanese intellectuals and ex-prime ministers, etc. They didn't go there. But answering your question, you know, I recently had a very painful conversation with an artist from Gaza. And she told me something that is really so true, related to archives. She told me, now we are the archives. And in fact, this is what the film, and you know, trying to do. You know, finally, everything, anything has traces. Whatever you do, even if you erase, you cannot erase everything. It's impossible. And I think that's why these people that today want to erase everything, they will eventually fail. They will fail, but at the cost of many lives. That's the sad part of it. There's no way to erase people, history. There's no way to do it. So, yeah.
Thank you, Kamal.
Thank you.